Somewhere, this weekend, there's a house with a folding table set up in the driveway. On that table is a wedding china set priced at $2 a plate, a box of tools marked everything $5, tools someone cleaned and oiled and put back in the same drawer for 40 years. Someone spent a whole life assembling that table. They didn't know that's what they were doing. Every morning they got up early. Every year they told themselves it was for something. And it was. It was for the folding table. They just couldn't see it from inside. Who is all of this actually for? Not in theory. Actually. Who is this work for if we end up dead anyway? You're accumulating. A house maybe, a car that still has payments on it, some number in an account you check more often than you'd admit to anyone. You worked for it, not lightly. You gave it years, you gave it mornings you don't remember, and a back that hurts in one specific place now, and friendships that quietly ended because you were busy. So answer this honestly, and don't perform the answer for anyone listening. Who gets it? Actually. Say the name. Now the second question, the one nobody asks out loud. Did that person earn it? They didn't. That isn't cruelty, it's arithmetic. You paid, someone else collects. You did the suffering, and they will do the spending. And they will spend it the way anyone spends money they didn't bleed for. Quickly, without ever knowing what it cost. That's the arrangement. You are a machine that converts a life into objects, and then stops. Actually stops. And the objects continue without you. The house doesn't remember who paid for it. The house had owners before you. It will have owners after. You were a tenant who mistook a long lease for ownership. Hold that. We're going to come back to it, and when we do, it's going to be worse. Because first, I want to walk you through an entire human life, beginning to end, not the version you'd give at a dinner table. The other one, the one running underneath while you're talking, the part you never agreed to, the script handed to you before you could read, the years that get deleted, the people leaving right now while still standing in front of you, the wanting that was never about the thing, the money and who collects it, and what's actually left when you stop performing. Almost none of it will be new to you. That's not a failure of this video. That's the point of it. You thought all of it already. You just never heard it said in order, out loud, with the lights on. Let's start where you started. You did not agree to this. That sentence is treated as either obvious or offensive, and the fact that it can be both tells you how carefully we avoid looking at it. You were brought into existence without your knowledge and without your agreement, into a specific body, a specific family, a specific economic class, a specific country, a specific decade of history, and you selected none of it. You woke up inside a life already in progress, speaking a language you didn't choose, inside a culture you never agreed to, carrying fears that were installed before you had the intelligence to notice them being installed. And from that position, you were expected to build something worthwhile, or be considered a failure. That is a breathtaking thing to ask of someone who never asked to be here. Now, think about how much of modern life is organized around consent. Medical procedures, contracts, financial obligations, anything permanent, anything irreversible, anything that shapes a person's life. We built entire legal systems around the principle that the person affected is the only one with standing to decide. Except one thing. Birth is the most total, most irreversible, most life-defining decision ever made about a person. It precedes everything. It determines everything. It cannot be undone. And it is made entirely without the person's input, because the person does not exist yet. Which means consent isn't just absent, it's structurally impossible. Birth is the only contract in existence signed entirely by the other party. And nobody is at fault for this. That's what makes it hard rather than outrageous. Your parents did something monstrous. They did the thing every human being has done for 200,000 years, mostly without examining it, often because the alternative wasn't available to them. But look at what the decision actually contains. David Benatar puts it in a way that is very difficult to argue with, honestly. Every birth introduces a being to suffering. Not might, will. The suffering isn't a risk that comes with life, it's the structure of life. Physical pain, fear, loss, grief, the specific devastation of watching someone you love stop existing. These come standard. Not one person in the entire history of the species has been issued a version without them. We assume the answer would have been yes. We have to assume it, because everything else rests on that assumption. But we have no evidence for it. What we actually have is that most people once alive choose to remain so, which is not consent to having been created. It's adaptation to something already done. The person who keeps living isn't endorsing the decision that brought them here. They're making the best of something that happened before they could speak. And then, when you're old enough, they hand you the bill. Work, perform, contribute, justify your presence. The system that never asked before creating you has now decided you owe it something. And ingratitude toward existence is treated as a moral failure. But what exactly is gratitude owed to something you didn't request? You can be grateful for a specific thing, a morning, a person, a moment where something went right. But blanket gratitude for existence itself, performed as an obligation, isn't gratitude, it's compliance with better manners. And the training in that starts early. Here's the first thing they asked you. What do you want to be when you grow up? Not how do you want to live, not what kind of person do you want to be in a room. Be. As though being were the same as holding a title, as though identity were something you acquire. That question planted something, and the world has been watering it every single day since. Because from that moment, your value was attached to output, grades, test scores, class rank, salary, job title, net worth, body weight, follower count. You were never a person to the machinery around you. You were a metric. And here's the inversion that most people never recover from. When the output started dropping, when the anxiety got loud, when the motivation collapsed, when you couldn't perform anymore, nobody asked what was wrong with the system, they asked what was wrong with you. And you accepted the premise. Almost everyone does. You went looking for the broken thing inside yourself and hired people to help you find it. You were not depressed because your brain chemistry was defective. Your brain chemistry was responding accurately to conditions that don't fit a human being. Those are two different diagnoses with two different cures, and you will only ever be offered the first one because the second one implicates the people offering it. Alongside the measuring, you were sold a story, that each person carries an extraordinary destiny waiting to happen, that life is a rising sequence of achievements and reinventions and grand moments. Films said it, advertising said it, teachers said it gently, coaches said it loudly, and eventually you said it to yourself without noticing you were quoting someone. Something great is reserved for you. And when real life fails to match that, which it does for almost everyone permanently, the feeling that arrives isn't sadness exactly. It's more corrosive than sadness. It's the sense of being a failed version of who you were supposed to be. Sit with how strange that is. You are not comparing your life to another real life. You're comparing it to a story you were told before you were old enough to evaluate the source. Nothing is wrong with you. The premise was wrong. But you'll spend years not knowing that, possibly decades, reading the ordinary texture of your own existence as evidence of personal deficiency. And underneath the story, the days themselves are doing something quieter and worse. Because nothing wears a person down like the thing that never ends. It isn't the disasters. The mind is strangely durable against disasters. People survive genuine catastrophe with a resilience that surprises everyone, including themselves. What actually corrodes a life is much quieter than that. It's the continuity. Eating today so you can be hungry again tomorrow. Working this month to pay bills that regenerate next month. Cleaning a room that will be dirty again. Solving problems that don't get solved, only reshaped. Hannah Arendt noticed that the labor tied to survival never completes itself. It always has to be done again for life to continue. It doesn't produce endings, it produces maintenance. And maintenance is where most of a human life actually takes place. Here's the thought almost everyone has had, and almost nobody says. I am going to spend most of my life doing things I don't want to do for people who won't fully appreciate it in exchange for money that disappears immediately toward a retirement I might not reach in a body that is quietly breaking down the entire time. That's not pessimism. That's a neutral description of an average life. And the reason it feels dangerous to say out loud isn't that it's wrong. It's that it's largely right, and we've collectively agreed not to look at it directly. Now, the part that should actually frighten you. Almost nobody can remember most of their own life. A few dates survive, some intense moments. The rest dissolves. Entire years vanish as though they never occurred. And not because your memory is weak, because memory is built to record what stands out. Novelty, surprise, intensity. When the days resemble each other closely enough, there are no markers to separate one from another, and so the brain stops filing them separately. Everything blurs, everything merges. Take it seriously for a second. You've lived, say, 35 years. How much can you actually recall? Not in summary, in texture, in actual sensory detail. A few hundred moments, maybe? Probably fewer. The rest, the overwhelming majority of your hours awake on this planet, is gone. Not stored somewhere you can't reach. Gone. Dissolved into the undifferentiated mass of days that were too much like the others to keep. You will not remember most of your own life. You are living through the part that gets deleted. And this is happening right now. Today is very probably one of the deleted ones. That's the real cruelty of the clock. Not that it runs out, but that it runs out while you were busy doing things that didn't require you to be present for them. And the running out feels like nothing at all until you look back and it's already behind you. A project postponed for a year, then another, and then a decade is missing. The body aged while the idea stayed exactly where it was, untouched, intact in the mind. Children grew while their parents were busy. Conversations were deferred. Forgiveness was suspended pending a better moment that never arrived, because the better moment isn't a real thing. It's a story the risk-averse mind produces to justify the delay, and delay is how entire lives disappear. Which would matter less if the people you were delaying with stayed the same. They don't. And almost everyone is terrified of being alone. Not lonely, terrified. Those aren't the same. Loneliness happens to you. This terror is something people organize their whole existence around avoiding. They stay in relationships that stopped working years ago. They sleep next to people they've grown to quietly resent. They perform intimacy with someone who has, through years of slow erosion, become a stranger with a familiar face. All of it rather than sit alone in a quiet room with their own thoughts. Ask yourself honestly what that says about the thoughts. Because here's what most people are actually protecting. Not the relationship, the not knowing. Solitude is not what happens when nobody loves you. Solitude is what happens when the noise stops and you're left with whatever was underneath it the whole time. And it's not harmful, it's clarifying, which is worse. It strips the social costume off and leaves you standing in front of yourself with no buffer, and most people have almost no idea what's under there. The solitude doesn't create the emptiness. It reveals the emptiness that was always there, that other people were being used to paper over. And most of the time, you didn't love the person. You loved the version of them you built. Because at the beginning, you don't know someone. You know an impression, a surface, a managed presentation that they're performing about as hard as you are. And into that impression, you pour everything you need. The person who will understand you completely, who will stay, who will make the specific shape of your specific emptiness finally make sense. You fall in love with that. You fall in love with your own need wearing a human face. Then time happens, coexistence happens, and the projection can only survive so long before reality dismantles it, before you see the smallness, the contradictions, the wounds that don't match yours, all the specific ways this actual person falls short of the imagined one you were in love with. Some people update, they let the fantasy die and find something real in whoever remains, smaller than imagined, more flawed, but actual. Those relationships are rare, and the people inside them usually don't know what they have. Most people grieve the projection instead. They spend the rest of the relationship trying to recover the feeling from the beginning, which was never about the person at all. It was the high of having the emptiness temporarily filled. When the high fades, they call it falling out of love. What actually happened is simpler and harder. Reality arrived. And here's the part nobody says clearly, which is stranger and sadder than the breakup version. Everyone you love is leaving right now. Slowly, continuously, not dramatically. The person your closest friend was 5 years ago is partially gone. The version of your parent who could run with you is gone. The version of your partner who looked at you the way they used to look at you, that one's already gone, and there was no announcement. People don't leave all at once. They change incrementally. And if you aren't watching, you wake up one day beside a relative stranger wearing a face you know very well. And you have been doing the same thing to them. The version of you that fell in love with the people you love no longer exists either. Everyone is quietly grieving someone who is still alive. Everyone is mourning a version of themselves that disappeared without a ceremony. There's a last layer under even that, and it doesn't go away with the right person. You were alone in there. structurally, irreducibly. Not unloved, alone in the sense that no other consciousness has ever entered yours. No one has ever felt your pain with the exact texture you feel it. No one has accessed your interior without the distortion of translation. Language is an approximation. Understanding is always partial. There is a core of your experience that has never been transmitted to another person, not because you haven't tried, but because the transmission is not possible. You will die having been partly unknown to everyone who ever loved you. That's not a failure of intimacy. That's the shape of being a separate mind and a separate body. And the people who face it honestly stop punishing everyone around them for failing to solve something that was never solvable. So people reach for something else, something that can be held. Imagine a dog chasing its own tail. It spins, it strains, it never quite reaches. If by accident it catches the tip, there's a second of relief, and then the pain arrives and the cycle restarts. Replace the dog with a person and the tail with what you call happiness. Schopenhauer described the whole mechanism in one image. Life swings like a pendulum between suffering and boredom. If you don't get what you want, you're in frustration. If you do get it, you're in the emptiness that arrives immediately afterward. There isn't a third position. There's no resting point between the two where a person can stand. And this isn't philosophy that time has softened. Neuroscience just gave it a chemical name. Your brain does not reward you for getting things. It rewards you for wanting them. Dopamine spikes in anticipation, not in arrival. The craving is the drug. The having is, almost always, a mild disappointment you're not allowed to admit to. You are not chasing the thing, you are chasing the state of chasing. Which is why you've pursued the promotion for 2 years, got it, felt good for about a week, and then found a new thing to be anxious about. Why the apartment you needed so badly became background noise inside 3 months. Why the relationship you spent years imagining turned almost immediately upon starting into something you were afraid of losing. Psychology calls the second half of this hedonic adaptation, and it's one of the most thoroughly documented and least discussed findings in the entire field. You are biologically designed to stop feeling the good things. The extraordinary becomes expected. The expected stops registering. And the asymmetry is worse than most people know. Losses hurt longer than equivalent gains feel good. The nervous system is more sensitive to what it fears losing than to what it has already gained. Nobody sits you down before you start working towards something and says, even if you get all of it, the feeling will fade faster than you expect, and the version of you standing at that destination will be quietly confused about why it feels so ordinary. Because if they told you that honestly, the entire motivational machinery of modern life would need rebuilding. And now there is an industry that has studied this mechanism, mapped it precisely, and built a global economy on top of it. Every platform on your phone is designed by teams of very intelligent people whose actual job is to keep you in the wanting state as long as possible, not the satisfied state, the reaching, hungry, incomplete one, because that's where attention lives, and attention is the product being sold. You were not born feeling insufficient. You were trained into it continuously from before you could evaluate the training. And the training does not stop. Which brings us to the thing that machinery actually runs on, and the part of this nobody wants to open. Money. People aren't having children, and the conversation about it is conducted almost entirely in the wrong language. Values, culture, selfishness, decline. Meanwhile, the actual answer is sitting in plain sight, and it's not philosophical at all. They can't afford them. Not can't afford them comfortably, can't. A generation that entered adulthood into rent that consumes half of income, education debt that outlives the education, wages that stop tracking the cost of existing somewhere around the time their parents bought a house on one salary, that generation is not making a moral choice about the future of civilization. It's doing arithmetic. And here's what makes it darker rather than lighter. The philosophical version is real too. Both things are true at once. People are hesitating for ethical reasons, genuinely, seriously, more thoughtfully than any generation before them, because they know more about how damage travels from a parent into a child than anyone in history has known. But they'd hesitate anyway, even without the philosophy, because the numbers don't work. So run your own numbers for a second and be honest, because this is where it stops being about children and starts being about you. The rent. How many years have you paid it? 6? 11? 20? Add it up. Actually add it up, and then answer this. Show me one thing you own for that money. You can't. There is no object. There is no equity. There is a receipt for the right to have existed indoors for a while, and the receipt expires the day you stop paying. The loan, 20 years of payments, maybe 30, which means there is a version of your life in which that loan is finished, and there is a very reasonable chance you will not be alive to live in it. You are paying right now for a future you may never occupy. The card in your wallet, someone will close it. The car, the savings, the furniture you spent 2 weeks researching before buying, none of it is standing still. All of it is on a timer that started the day you acquired it. Everything you own is on loan from time, and time does not renew. And that's the setup for the part I actually want to say. 20 minutes ago, I asked you a question, and you did not answer it. You think you did. You didn't. You thought about the house for a second, you felt something start to move, and then you slid sideways and kept watching. Because watching is easier than answering, and you've had a lot of practice. So we're doing it again. And this time, you don't get to move. Say the name. Not the family, not the kids, not whoever's left, the specific human being who is going to stand in your house and decide what's worth keeping. You already have their face. That's not a trick. That's just what happens when somebody finally asks the question directly, and it's why you avoided it the first time. Hold it there. Don't put it down. Now, did they earn it? And notice what you just did. Immediately, automatically, you started building their case. They've had it hard. They'd do the same for me. That's what it's all for anyway. All of that might be true. None of it is an answer. I didn't ask whether you love them. I asked whether they earned it. They didn't. That's not an accusation against them. They never applied for the job. It's arithmetic. You paid, they collect. You did the years, they'll do the spending. And they will spend it exactly the way anyone spends money they didn't bleed for. Fast, casually, without ever once knowing what it cost, because nobody can know that because the cost was your mornings, and there's no way to itemize a morning. Here's what makes it worse than unfair. They shouldn't have to know. That's the whole point of what you're doing. You're working so that they never have to understand what the work felt like. You are deliberately buying them the ignorance. So the arrangement isn't cruel, it's just complete. You convert a life into objects, and then you stop, and the objects go on without you, held by someone who is supposed not to understand what they're holding. You paid in years. They will receive it in paperwork. You skipped your children's evenings to build a house they will eventually sell. You destroyed your sleep and your blood pressure for a property a stranger will walk through on a Sunday afternoon, opening your closets, commenting on your taste, negotiating your life's work down to a number they'll then try to talk lower. You missed the sunsets to pay for the view. And it goes further than that, into the places people really don't say out loud. The savings you protected like a second heartbeat, someone will spend casually on something you'd have thought was stupid. The heirs you sacrificed for may well be fighting over the estate before your body is cold. Siblings turning into strangers over the exact money that was supposed to be the proof of how much you loved them. The business you bled for, run by someone who never lost a night over it, or sold to someone who never learned your name. You worked harder for these things than anyone who will ever hold them. And now you know why this video started in a driveway. That table wasn't an image, it was the receipt. Every object on it was bought with hours that are gone. The china was a raise, the tools were a decade of Saturdays, the frames were his money spent on purpose to keep the only things he actually cared about. And they were the first items sold, and they were sold empty. That is where your treasures are going. Not to a museum of your life, to a folding table in your own driveway, handled by strangers looking for a bargain. The things you couldn't live without will be things nobody wants to live with. Even the deathbed knows this. Ask anyone who works in hospice what people reach for at the end. Nobody has ever asked to see their bank balance one last time. Nobody asks for the deed. They ask for faces. They ask for hands. They ask for one more hour of exactly the thing they spent 40 years postponing in order to work. The final audit of a human life is conducted in a bed, and the assets are not admitted into the room. You call a house yours. It existed before you. It will belong to someone else after you. It has had owners and it will have owners, and it does not know your name. You call a body yours. It ages without consulting you. It betrays you cell by cell. One day it will simply refuse your instructions. You call time yours. It leaks out of you while you sleep, and no lock that has ever been made has held a single second of it. You are a tenant who mistook a long lease for ownership. Ecclesiastes, which is somehow the darkest book anyone ever allowed into Scripture, says it without any decoration at all. I hated all my toil under the sun, because I must leave it to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Who knows? You don't, and you never will, because you'll be gone before the answer arrives. From the outside, accumulation looks like prudence. From the inside, it is very often fear that put on the clothes of wisdom and learned to call itself a plan. And the fear underneath the fear is that none of it holds your name for long. Because there's an idea that every person dies twice. The first death is when the heart stops. The second death is the last time someone says your name out loud. And for almost everyone who has ever lived, the second one happens quietly, decades later, and nobody notices it happening. Try this and don't skip it, because everything after this depends on you actually doing it. Name your great-great-grandparents. Not what they did, their names. You can't. Almost nobody can. And every one of them was, for their entire life, the absolute center of a universe. Each of them fell in love, panicked about money, had a favorite song, believed their problems were enormous and their story was somehow different from everyone else's. You are looking directly at your own future. That's not a metaphor, that's a family tree. Because when your turn comes, and it is coming, it has never once been late for an appointment. Count the lives that will actually stop. Not the people who will post something, not the colleagues who sign a card, the people whose world genuinely breaks. You can probably count them on one hand. And a few weeks after, even they will eat again, laugh again, argue about something small again. The human heart heals, and its healing is your erasure. Most of the 8 billion people alive right now will die without ever learning that you existed. And the handful who did know you, their memory has an expiration date too. Your children will die, your grandchildren will die. 2 or 3 generations, and you become exactly what your great-great-grandparents are to you right now, a blank. Time erases names the way water erases footprints. Not with malice, with something worse, with total indifference. And here's the small detail that nobody puts in a eulogy. Your phone will keep receiving notifications after you die. Promotional emails, newsletters, appointment reminders for things you will not attend. The machinery of your life keeps running for weeks, like a house with the lights still on after everyone has left, until somebody finally, quietly, cancels you. I want to be careful here because this is the exact place where this genre usually gets lazy and just piles on. So let me say the honest version instead of the dramatic one. None of this means your life doesn't matter. It means it doesn't matter permanently. Those are completely different claims, and collapsing them is the single most common mistake made about this subject, usually by people who find the collapse comforting, because if nothing matters, then nothing is required of you. Something does not need to last in order to have happened. The mistake is not in being temporary. The mistake is in demanding permanence from temporary things and then calling it grief when they behave exactly as they always were going to. So, what do you do with all of that? Not what do you feel about it, what do you do? And I want to be precise here because there is an enormous amount of garbage sold in this exact space. The wellness version, the reframe, the morning routine, the idea that if you just adjust your attitude, the structure of reality will become more agreeable. That's not what this is. Here's the actual move, and it's 2,500 years old, and every serious tradition that has ever looked at this problem arrived at some version of it independently. Your pain does not come from loss. It comes from the belief that you had something to lose in the first place. Look at where the suffering actually lives in any of it. You aren't devastated because someone left. You're devastated because you'd already decided they were yours. You aren't destroyed by the failure. You're destroyed because you fused your entire sense of worth to the outcome. So when it collapsed, you collapsed with it. You aren't broken by the solitude. You're broken because you built an identity around another person's presence and handed them your selfhood for safekeeping, and they walked out the door still holding it. Every time you suffer, every single time, somewhere underneath it, there's a contract you wrote. If I give this much, I receive that much. If I love this hard, they stay. If I work this long, I'm rewarded. If I'm good enough, I'm protected. Reality never signed that. It never read it. It has been operating on its own logic the entire time, completely indifferent to the arrangements you made in your own head. So when it comes apart, you don't just grieve the loss, you grieve the framework, you grieve the operating system, which turns out to have been corrupted from the beginning. That's the grief that breaks people for years, not the event, the discovery that the ground was never solid. And here's the part that sounds like a consolation prize until you actually understand it. If the universe owes you nothing, then the universe is also not targeting you. It isn't punishing you. It isn't correcting you. The losses were not personal. They weren't a verdict on your worth, because there is no court and no judge and nothing keeping score. Reality doesn't know your name. It just moves. And sometimes that movement goes through the things you love. And that tearing is neither justice nor injustice. It's just what movement does. Which means you've been suffering twice this entire time. Once from what actually happened, and a second time, usually for much longer, from the story that what happened was wrong, that an agreement was violated, that you were specifically cheated, that there's a debt somewhere that hasn't been paid. Drop the second one. That's the whole instruction. That's the thing. The event hurt. The story you built on top of the event is the cage, and you built it, and you're holding the key. Now, people hear let go and imagine it means caring less, retreating, going cold, developing a kind of managed indifference so nothing can reach you. It's the opposite, and the opposite is provable in your own experience. You love a sunset more when you're not trying to photograph it. You love a person more when you're not trying to own them. You love your own life more when you stop measuring it against the version you were supposed to have. Detachment does not produce less feeling, it produces cleaner feeling. Feeling that isn't constantly contaminated by the terror of its own ending. Because impermanence is not the enemy of meaning, it is the source of it. If anything lasted forever, nothing would register. The sunset is extraordinary specifically because it ends. The conversation matters because there is a finite number of them left. The love is profound because it's held between two people who both know how it ends. Your entire life has been valuable for exactly that reason, and you've spent most of it trying to make it permanent instead of letting it be what it actually is: finite, passing, and because of that, not despite it, real. Which takes us back to the folding table one last time, because there's something I left out of the opening, and it's the only thing in this video I'd actually call good news. Everything on that table was a means. The china, the tools, the frames, every object was purchased to serve something. A meal with people in it, the house that stayed standing, a face worth photographing. And the objects failed, permanently, the way objects do. But the meal happened, the house stood, the face was there, in a room on an afternoon, and someone thought it was worth pointing a camera at. And none of that is on the table. It was never going to be on the table. It was already spent correctly at the time. The tragedy isn't that a life ends up on a folding table. The tragedy is spending the life acquiring the objects under the impression that the objects were the point, postponing the meal, skipping the afternoon, missing the face in order to pay for the frame that will one day be sold without the photo in it. So here's where all of this lands. Not on despair. Despair is easy, and it's also lazy. It doesn't ask questions, it just says nothing matters and stops there, and that's not what an hour of this was for. What it lands on is accuracy. You did not consent to being here. You were handed a script. Most of your days will be deleted. The people you love are already changing into people you'll have to meet again. The wanting will not resolve because the wanting is not about the objects. Your name has an expiration date, and so does everyone's who remembers it. All of that is true, and none of it is an argument for stopping. It's an argument for stopping the performance, which is a completely different thing and much harder, and the only version of this that actually changes a day. Because when you stop needing life to mean something, you stop being betrayed by it when it doesn't. You stop the cycle of constructing significance and then collapsing when the significance turns out to have been invented. And what's left is strange and brutal, and occasionally, in moments that don't need explaining, astonishingly specific and vivid and real. Not beautiful, real. There's a difference. Beautiful is a story told about experience. Real is the experience before the story in your body exactly as it is. You can't be sold that. You can't be manipulated through it. Nobody can threaten you with its loss. The cycle does not break. It never has. Nobody watching this is going to be the exception, and neither am I. Everything in this video will still be true tomorrow morning, but you can be awake inside it. Most people are not. That's the entire difference. And it's available immediately, and it costs nothing, and no one is going to give you permission. You are going to lose all of it. That was always the arrangement. The only question left is whether you were here for any of it while you still had it. Say the name, then go do something about the part that isn't on the table yet. If you got this far, you already know this channel isn't built for comfort. It's for people willing to look at hard things without needing them softened first. And if this one got under your skin, if it named something you've thought quietly and never said out loud, there's one thing you can do that costs nothing. YouTube gives smaller channels a feature called hype. It's not a like and it's not a comment. It's a separate button, and every viewer gets a few of them each week to spend on channels they think deserve to be found. And on a channel this size, it counts for more than it would on a huge one. That's built into how it works on purpose to help smaller voices get discovered instead of buried. If this said something worth more people hearing, that's the one action that actually moves it. Everything else, sharing it, sitting with it, the fact that you stayed for the whole thing instead of clicking away the moment it got uncomfortable, that's already more than most people are willing to give a question like this. Thank you for staying long enough to think about it instead of just feeling it and moving on. This is Eternal Rift.